Building on the previous modules that explored valid contract elements and consideration, this section focuses on the drafting and enforcement of contract terms and conditions within Arizona real estate transactions. While the earlier lessons established how a contract becomes legally binding, this section examines how the specific terms within that contract guide the relationship between the parties, determine how obligations are fulfilled, and outline what happens when disputes arise or when one party seeks to cancel the agreement. Understanding how to properly draft, interpret, and apply these terms is essential for real estate professionals to ensure fairness, compliance, and enforceability under Arizona law. A real estate contract is more than just an agreement to buy and sell property. It is a carefully structured document that defines every aspect of the transaction. The terms of the contract refer to the specific promises and obligations made by the parties, such as purchase price, financing arrangements, closing date, possession, and the condition of the property. The conditions are the events or actions that must occur before those promises become enforceable, such as obtaining financing, completing inspections, or clearing title. Arizona's legal framework requires that these terms and conditions be clearly stated in writing to prevent misunderstanding and to ensure all parties know their rights and duties. For example, in a standard Arizona Association of Realtors, AR, residential resale real estate purchase contract, the buyer agrees to deposit earnest money, complete inspections within a specific timeframe, and obtain loan approval before the closing date. The seller, in turn, agrees to deliver marketable title, maintain the property, and complete any agreed-upon repairs. If either party fails to meet these terms, the other may have legal remedies, including cancellation or specific performance. Each provision in the contract serves to protect one or both parties and to create an enforceable roadmap from offer to closing. Remember that neither party is in tort breach of contract unless the non-breaching party sends a cure period notice. Dispute resolution clauses are one of the most important sections within contract terms and conditions because they establish how conflicts will be addressed without automatically resorting to litigation. Most Arizona real estate contracts include mediation and arbitration provisions, which require parties to attempt to resolve disputes through neutral third parties before filing a lawsuit. The Arizona Association of Realtors and the Arizona Department of Real Estate encourage mediation because it reduces costs, preserves relationships, and provides quicker resolutions. Under the Arizona Arbitration Act, ARS, paragraph 12 to 1501 at SAQ, agreements to arbitrate are valid and enforceable as long as both parties consent in writing. A practical example involves a buyer and seller disputing the condition of a property's roof after inspection. Rather than filing suit, they may submit the dispute to mediation, where a neutral mediator helps them negotiate a solution. If mediation fails, arbitration can be used for a binding decision. Another critical aspect of contract terms and conditions involves cancellation and default provisions. These terms explain how either party may terminate the contract lawfully and what happens to funds, such as earnest money, upon cancellation. For instance, if the buyer fails to deliver loan approval within the financing contingency period, the seller may issue a cure notice under the standard contract, giving the buyer a set number of days to correct the issue. If the buyer fails to comply, the seller may cancel the contract and retain the earnest money as liquidated damages. Conversely, if the seller breaches the contract, such as by refusing to deliver marketable title, the buyer may cancel the contract and recover earnest money, or seek specific performance through the courts. Arizona courts, including in Young v. House, Bishop, and Arizona 1952, have consistently held that cancellation terms must be exercised in good faith and in strict compliance with the written contract to be enforceable. Young v's Bishop, Arizona 1952, is an Arizona Supreme Court case holding that escrow instructions can constitute a binding contract when they reflect the parties' mutual assent and are supported by consideration. In the case, the parties agreed to buy and sell real property and executed escrow instructions outlining the essential terms of the transaction. One party later attempted to avoid the deal, arguing there was no enforceable contract. The court rejected that argument, explaining that the mutual promises to buy and sell supplied sufficient consideration and that the signed escrow instructions evidenced the parties' intent to be bound. The decision is frequently cited in Arizona real estate law for the principle that properly executed escrow instructions are not merely administrative documents, but can themselves be an enforceable agreement. Contract terms also outline the rights and responsibilities of all parties throughout the transaction. The buyer's primary duties include completing inspections, securing financing, adhering to deadlines, and acting in good faith to close. The seller's duties include disclosing all known material defects as required by Hill v. Jones, Ares App Year 1986, maintaining the property in substantially the same condition through closing, and providing clear title. Both parties must also act within the timelines specified in the contract, as failure to do so may constitute a breach. Under ARS, Paragraph 33, 422, sellers must provide an affidavit of disclosure for certain properties located outside of subdivisions in unincorporated islands, for instance, further reinforcing their statutory duties. The terms of a contract often incorporate contingencies, which are conditions that must be satisfied for the contract to proceed. Common examples include financing contingencies, appraisal contingencies, and inspection contingencies. If a contingency is not met, the buyer may be able to cancel the contract without penalty. However, contingencies must be exercised in good faith and within the stated timeframe. Courts have ruled that failure to act within the contractual period may waive a party's rights. For example, if a buyer discovers defects but misses the inspection deadline, they may be required to proceed with the purchase or risk defaulting. Making sure you know your critical dates is paramount to protect your client. Arizona real estate contracts are designed to balance protection with accountability, ensuring both parties have clear expectations and remedies. Brokers and licensees must understand these terms thoroughly because their role involves explaining the implications to clients and ensuring compliance. Commissioner's Rule R428-1101E requires licensees to ensure all real estate documents are complete and accurate before execution, while subsection I requires agents to exercise reasonable care in communicating material facts. Misinterpreting or mishandling a contractual term can expose both the agent and their client to financial and legal consequences. Discussion. Why is it important that contract terms and conditions be clearly stated in writing? Answer. Because written terms prevent misunderstanding, provide evidence of agreement, and ensure that all parties are aware of their rights, duties, and remedies under Arizona law. What is the difference between mediation and arbitration in real estate disputes? Answer. Mediation is a voluntary, non-binding process where a neutral third party helps parties reach an agreement, while arbitration results in a binding decision made by an arbitrator after reviewing evidence. Why must cancellation and default provisions be followed precisely as written? Answer. Because Arizona courts enforce cancellation rights only when exercised in good faith and in strict compliance with the contract's terms and timelines, protecting both parties from arbitrary termination. Review summary. The terms and conditions of a real estate contract define every aspect of the transaction, from financial obligations to performance deadlines and dispute resolution procedures. They ensure that the rights and duties of each party are clearly understood and legally enforceable. Properly drafted terms protect against ambiguity and promote good faith performance, while conditions such as contingencies provide flexibility and fairness when circumstances change. Dispute resolution clauses promote efficiency and cooperation, encouraging mediation or arbitration before litigation. Cancellation provisions must be followed exactly as written to remain valid, and rights such as the buyer's inspection or financing contingencies must be exercised within designated timeframes. Arizona statutes, commissioners' rules, and case law, such as Hill v. Jones and Young v. Bishop, reinforce that clear, lawful, and mutual terms are essential to enforceability. For real estate professionals, mastering these principles ensures compliance, client protection, and the integrity of every transaction.